Okay, okay.
Saratan Mahabharat 2.
We can wait.
Waiting តរឯ post តរកហៅរែ
Uh, I'm just coming back from an important meeting. Today we had the
នេះវាខ្ញុំ
motor
ថាមានរកែ
studies meeting, and it took a long time. Anyway, I'm now here, and I don't know what actually um are the remaining portions that have not been taken up so far by any of the teachers, and I just want to know from you how, say, what portion of the syllabus have you already been completed, and what are the items left? So far, my knowledge is concerned. I was going to teach you this Mahabharata and the Ramayana. I think I had already gave some introduction on Mahabharata, and that is mainly the Sabha Parva. And I think you have already understood that Sabha Parva of Mahabharata. I have already narrated, and the reading can be done by you. And there are some different parts of the Sabha Parva. Sabha Parva is a Parva where, the early part, it is the first part of the Mahabharata is called Adi Parva. Next to Adi Parva is Sabha Parva. So it deals with the early, say, history of Mahabharata, where the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they started their enmity, and then Pandavas were defeated by the Kauravas in the game of dice, and then that mainly that game of dice is there in that scene, and there is a famous, exchange of words and ideas in that the Sabha Parva, in the Sabha, that is Great Assembly Hall. So that is there in Mahabharata, and there are so many different interpretations, and it strikes even the note of feminism when Draupadi made the argument based on the natural justice, even though Yudhishthir is her husband. Yudhishthir already, is a lost man, and in that gambling, Yudhishthir offered himself first. Therefore, after becoming the servant or the slave, after losing himself, do Yudhishthir say have the right to say offer Draupadi again as his wife, etc. And then, according to the Hindu mythology, Hindu religious tradition, wife belongs to the husband. Therefore, wife is considered as a property of the husband. But as the husband becomes a slave, then the wife is, after all, the queen, not an ordinary woman. Therefore, the queen has got her own individual right, and that sort of argument is there that I have already narrated this here. So that portion, I think all of you might have gone through it, and as we do not have much time to discuss it extensively, if we have to discuss one particular aspect, then of Mahabharata, then it is possible. But as time is also a problem, we don't have much time at our disposal, because your classes uh, will, I think, for a few weeks maximum, your classes may continue. Then you will have your examination, and tomorrow we are having a meeting. So I convene a meeting today. I issue the notice today. Just after issuing the notice, I am coming back. So tomorrow we will be having a meeting. In that meeting, we will decide the date for your examination. So it should be, as we had already agreed, it should be on online mode. Therefore, the examinations can be held online, but it should be full paper, full marks, and you have to submit the written script to the department. I mean, the hard copy. You have to submit. You have to appear the examination online, but again, you have to submit the hard copies also. Anyway, tomorrow we will be having a meeting, and I'm thinking that it may be held in the third week of March or the last week of March. I want to complete it within the month of March, but I don't know what other uh, teachers may say. Anyway, we have already, there is a general agreement that everything can be completed within March. And moreover, your CBCS papers are also there. So I don't have much idea about your CBCS paper. Today, will this paper be decided separately by the university authority, the exam date of the CBCS courses? I mean,
Yes, sir, by the respective departments that we have taken, sir.
no, not the respective departments. So what I am told by some teachers is that the CBCS courses should be decided centrally by the controller of examination. Is it true?
Sir,
Or
notice is given like that from controller examination, sir. But I think that the date is fixed by the department, sir.
by the department. Then again, when we fix the CBCS examination date, then they belong to different departments, different other departments. If they had fixed their examination and if there is a collusion, then what will happen? On the same day, for example, CBCS courses are offered by students from other departments. Therefore, if they had their own examination on the day when we fix the date, then there will be some sort of a conflict. That's the main apprehension we had. Anyway, we can also fix the CBCS date, but if other departments also fix it on the same day, because CBCS students, we do not know how many of them are coming from which department. Some students may be coming from physics, from chemistry, from history, sociology, linguistics. So they may have their own timetable for examination. So if there is some sort of an overlapping, then it will create a problem. So I think, but I have been told that so the CBCS courses will be decided centrally by the controller of examination for all CBCS courses. Anyway, if they do not do it, then we may also fix it. But that
Sir,
was the,
most of the
huh?
departments are having their exams on either 16 or 17 for the CBCS.
Huh?
Most of the departments are having their CBCS exam on either 16 or 17.
16 or 17.
Yeah.
16 or 17 means that then we cannot have our examination on 16 or 17 in that case. Uh, are you going to say like that?
Yes, sir. They said that CBCS should be held first, the exams.
CBCS for all departments.
Yes.
Anyway, then CBCS examination is to be fixed on 16 and the 17. Then we can also have our examination on 16 and 17. Can we have? Anyway, tomorrow we will be having the meeting. So the best thing is that CBCS courses should be decided by the, I mean, controller, independent of the opinions of the departments. If the departments pick their say dates, then there is a chance of collision. Therefore, in that case, what will happen? If 16 and the 17 is the date for CBCS courses, then our department can also fix the CB on 16th or 17th. If it is feasible, then it's all right. I heard that some departments have already had their CBCS exams. For example, mathematics. Do you know about the examination in mathematics?
Yes, sir. Routine is out for them.
Routine is out.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Uh, when will their examination be held?
Sir, during the month of March, but sir, the exact dates I have not. Sir, let me check.
Exact date is important. Say, tomorrow's meeting, I'm just thinking whether we can fix the date by ourselves or
Sir, for the mathematics department, the CBCS exam is on that 15, and their main examination started from 24th of March. I mean,
24th of March.
yeah.
So we main examination no problem because we are also having our main examination maybe in the third week or last week of March that we will take care of it. But about the CBCS courses, if we have it first, then it will be there will be no problem. But I have been told that it should be decided by the controller of examination for all departments. If it is true, it is good, and if it is left to us to be decided by the departments concerned, then we have to see whether our dates are collided with others' dates. That's the only problem. Anyway, that can be taken care of in tomorrow's meeting. So if you have any idea, then you please inform me earlier before the meeting, or even in during the meeting, we can have our decision. So that is what we have already decided. So tomorrow we will be having, and this is sure that your classes will be held online, and it should be full paper. Earlier, we were asking only two questions, and the marks were given 25, 25, and that is for simply for namesake we had exam. But this will be uh, the full paper. So there will be five, six questions, and it will be held. Anyway, you can do it. So that is the online courses. So what I would like to say, to ask you again is that what are the portions which you have covered, and what are the portions which are not covered and which are yet to be covered. So at our disposal we have got at least 2 3 weeks, and I'd like that to give some time for preparation for examination. But if it is going to be held online, yes, one last question I would like to ask is that we will not give much time for preparation because we do not have much time for preparation. These Yakshan holidays are there, so that will be considered as your preparation time. So just after a few days after the Yakshan festival, then we can have our examination. And the one last question that I would like to ask you is that, whether there should be, gaps between the examination, even though it is a full paper, as you are appearing it online, say for example, one paper every day, continuously. If that is can be done, we can finish it by March, within the March itself. Or if we have to
Yes,
give,
sir. Since it is online, we can continue like that, sir.
yeah, yeah, every day one paper, and if possible, we can give one day's break also, because the sooner the better. So I like to complete everything within March, this examination. Anyway, tomorrow we can have discussion. So you can come tomorrow before the meeting. We will be having our meeting at 12:30. Therefore, if your representative Ernest and some of you can come, then we can have discussion. Discuss among yourselves also. We will be deciding like that. So that will be our thing. And the portion which
Classing.
I'm given to understand that Mahabharata is there, Ramayana is there, now coming to that Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So, and then Paradise
Yeah,
Lost is there,
classing
and some
very
poems
bad.
of Tagore. Is it there in your syllabus?
Yes, sir. For paper number
And who is taking those portions?
sir, it is supposed to be Sir Kunjo, but Sir Kunjo is not here in the department, so it was given to Ma'am Asalata, but Ma'am Asalata have not taken up, sir.
Hush. uh, Today Asalata came, and she told me that she won't be teaching it.
Why? Kara taki dun.
Anyway, then I have to teach that those poems of Tagore also. So in the meantime, try to collect those books, and I think some poems are from Gitanjali, and some poems are from some other volumes. Then the child is also there. The child, I don't know in this volume it is printed. Anyway, some poems of Tagore is there. Then Paradise Lost is also there. Then Ramayana and Mahabharata is also there. So then if I have to take care of Paradise Lost and those poems of Tagore, it may take some time for me. And what are other portions taken by other teachers?
Sir, for this one, paper number 301, sir, only this one, Passage to India is left for Sir Gambhir. And
Yeah,
for
yeah.
this paper number 303, only Sir Khuidong's portion is left, sir. Others already done by Sir.
303, for which portion? Kokodong's, some American writing, Maya Angelou, and the others, all those sort of things.
302, sir. Yeah, sir. Langston Hughes and Ellen Ginsberg and Maya Angelou, they should be taken by Sir Khuidong, but it is not done, sir.
So Khodong will take it, and the passage to India, Gambhir will take it, isn't it? And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and then Tagore's poems, Asalata will not be teaching it. She came to me today and she told me that she is not in a position to teach those poems. Therefore, I have to uh, take care of it. And then Paradise Lost is there, Milton's, and that's a very nice epic, and that's also to be done by me. So a lot of portions are there, and for me, I have already completed my portion, but those portion of Kunjo and is assigned again to me. Anyway, then we will take care of it. So then I think your syllabus can be covered well ahead of the schedule because examination may be held later on. So it is online classes. Therefore, I may have your online classes frequently also so as to cover. And today, frankly speaking, I'm very tired and I don't have the mood to teach also. Anyway, uh, I will discuss something with you about this Indian epic Ramayana because questions may be asked whether you make an attempt to answer those questions or not. At least we have to say something about discuss something about this Ramayana and the Mahabharata. As I have already told you, these are the two ancient Indian epics, and they are considered as great Vedic literature. They belong to Vedic literature, and the Vedic literature is part of the Indian heritage and the Indian culture, Indian civilization. I mean, the ancient Indian civilization is known as uh, Vedic civilization, and this is also called Aryan civilization. So it is a very old civilization, and it came just after the Indus Valley civilization, and we cannot find even a trace of Aryan civilization being connected with the Indus Valley civilization. And as of now, in the opinion of the experts, Indus Valley civilization came first, and suddenly after the annihilation of the Indus Valley civilization, Aryan civilization come up, and it was mainly based on rural settings. So Aryan civilization or Vedic civilization, as we would like to call it, is based on agriculture, is based on pastoral. It is a kind of a pastoral type of civilization. You know the pastoral concerning with pastors and the rural sort of activities, agricultural, and therefore these are more or less connected with the agriculture, cultivation, somewhat village life. Whereas in the village civilization, it was highly urban civilization. Urban people were living in well-built brick houses, and they were having drainage system, and the public bath, etc. All these factors. So in the village civilization is basically an urban civilization, whereas Aryan civilization is a rustic civilization. So Vedic literature more or less is concerned with those rustic elements, Vedic elements, and the people who are fighting with bows and arrows. So Ramayana is also another great epic, and it is generally believed that Mahabharata was written earlier, but Ramayana was written much later, and there are many versions of Ramayana. And right from the 11th century, we find so many different versions of Ramayana, and the famous among them is the original Ramayana version is Valmiki's Ramayana. And then in the 13th century, there is also another type of Ramayana which is written by uh, you know Kritibas. And generally, there are more than 24,000 verses in Ramayana. Mahabharata, it has got 1 lakh verses, and the Ramayana is also another epic of great length, and it has got around 24,000 verses. And this is also a very long poem. You know the meaning of epic. Epic is a long narrative poem, isn't it? And is there. And in Mahabharata, we have got different 18 volumes or khandas. And Ramayana is, compared to Mahabharata, Ramayana is shorter. It has got about 7 khandas. And it belongs to the genre of itihas. You know, itihas is a kind of narrative connected with history. And roughly, the English translation, English equivalent to itihas is history. But itihas, as it is understood in India, is not exactly the history as it is understood in the Western world. History is based on certain facts, on dates, isn't it? And on factual account. But in our Indian system, itihas seems to be somewhat, event. It is a kind of a narrative relating to the events that had occurred in the past, and the chronological sequence, the exact date, events, etc., are not considered to be very important. So there are certain, say, gaps in chronology, and the actual happening as historians record is quite different from those writers of itihasa. So Ramayana is considered as an itihas by some critics or even scholars, but it is not actual history as we used to think in terms of the modern concept, and that is also very important. And besides these two versions, main versions of this Tulsidas, no, not Krishna, Tulsidas, then Valmiki, then there are so many writers. I cannot remember everything. And then there are some versions of Ramayana which has been mentioned in the ancient Buddhist texts and the Jain texts. You know, now, Jainism and the Buddhism came to India around some centuries before Christ. So around 300 centuries, and both these movements appeared along with the Hinduism, and that is the actual period where all these great, Smritis and these Upanishads and the Vedas were written. So there are different versions of Ramayana as we find in the ancient Buddhist texts and in Jain texts, and then away from India, because during those days Buddhism, it originated from India and it went to other parts of the world, particularly Southeast Asia, then Ceylon, and some other countries like Asia, some other Asia like China and Japan. Buddhism was present. And then in Southeast Asia, in Laos, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, there were certain Hindu influence in the past, and naturally, the story of Ramayana is a kind of a work of an itihas. Then it went to Burma, it went to Laos, it went to Vietnam, and it went to Cambodia, in some other South Asian countries, including the today's Myanmar. Now it was known as Burma earlier. So there are different versions of Ramayana which have been, there in Mahabharata, in Burma, in Laos, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Thailand. And even in Cambodia, the biggest Hindu temple in the world is not in India, it is in Cambodia. Perhaps you might have heard the famous temple of Angkor Wat, and that complex, temple complex, is the biggest Hindu temple complex in the world. And now that Angkor Wat has an abandoned temple, but its importance is increasing, its significance lies as a great historical, as a great tourist place. Therefore, many tourists, thousands of them, visit Angkor Wat every year. Now, for many centuries, it was lost and it was covered by the jungle, and even the ruins of the ancient Hindu temples are found in Angkor Wat. And now that Angkor Wat is preserved as a national monument by the Cambodian government, and that it has become a famous tourist attraction for the country of Cambodia, and they are earning a lot of money from that Angkor Wat temple complex, and that was a Hindu temple essentially, and how it was abandoned, and suddenly after say constructing so many beautiful, the biggest temple on earth, then why these people, uh, did not adhere to Hinduism is the question. There are many possible solutions, possible answers to all these problems. So I would like to say by 15th century, the popularity of Ramayana, because in Angkor Wat temple and in other places of Southeast Asia, we will find stories of Ramayana, tell in different versions in Bali. Now, Bali is also a place in Indonesia where you find many Hindu temples, and there the tradition is also there, and the festivals of Ram are organized there. And there are so many other places where, this Ramayana is very popular in the Southeast Asia. But it is popular in their own way, and that they give different names. But the original history of Ramayana, as we all know, is concerned with Prince Ram. Prince Ram is the Prince of Ayodhya. Ayodhya is a small place nowadays, but during the days of Ramayana, it was the capital city. It was a great kingdom, a very powerful and well organized kingdom, a very say rich kingdom, so to say. And the king Dasaratha was ruling that kingdom, and that Dasaratha had got as the son called Ram. He has got many sons, but Ram is the eldest son. So Ram was supposed to be the king of Ayodhya after the death of Dasaratha. So when Dasaratha became very old, this is the story of Ramayana. Dasaratha became very old, and then he wanted to hand over the kingdom, the throne to his eldest son Ram, and then he declared it. He made an announcement that coronation of Ram will be made uh, on a certain date, and then people were very happy because Ram, was a good prince, and he was well loved by the people, and he was uh, perfect in all senses, so to say. So this is called Purushottam. That is a male having all the good qualities of head and the heart. And it is even considered by the Hindus that Ram is an avatar. Avatar means incarnation, incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Say, for example, Krishna is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And then Ram is also considered as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So in Hindu mythology, you will find many incarnations of the gods. Lord Vishnu, the supremacy of Vishnu in the Hindu hierarchy of gods, it became, say, very prominent only in the later part of the Vedic civilization. Earlier, I have told you about the different periods of Vedic civilization. Frankly speaking, it can be divided roughly into two parts, that the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So in the later Vedic period, among the pantheon of Hindu gods, Lord Vishnu's place, occupied a very important place, and the Lord Vishnu was considered to be the supreme god among all those gods, among the gods. And there were so many gods. Earlier in the early Vedic period, Lord Indra, Indra is the king of the gods, and he is considered as the uh, ruler of heaven. So King Indra was considered a very important god in the early Vedic period, but in course of time, the importance of Indra declined, and then alternatively, Lord Vishnu, occupied the central position in the hierarchy of the gods. And then there are 10 important avatars or incarnations of Lord Vishnu in Hindu mythology, and this is known as Dasavatar. Das means 10. It is in Sanskrit. Therefore, Dasavatar means 10 incarnations. And these 10 incarnations, we find the evolution. Say, for example, the first incarnation is in the form of a fish, and then a little development, and then it become a kind of a bone, then wild vein, then ultimately, so it was growing up. So from fish, which lives underwater, then it became amphibian, and then later on it took the form of a dwarf that is known as Vaman avatar. Then before coming to Vaman avatar, there is half man, half beast, that is called Narasimha avatar. That evolution you can find if you find Dasa avatar from from Masa avatar, that is fish avatar, then from tortoise avatar. So tortoise is still developed, developed for more developed than the fish. Then Kumar avatar is known as tortoise, and then it makes a kind of a wild boar avatar. Then half man, half say beast, that is half man, then half lion. Therefore, that is called Narasimha avatar. That is then ultimately it became human being. That is the growth. See the evolution, and then it became Brahman avatar. Brahman is a kind of a dwarf, even though it is a human being, just by evolution a dwarf, and then it became Parshuram, then a wild man, then ultimately it became Lord Ram. So Ram's avatar is one of the later avatars, and in the incarnation of Ram, then Lord Vishnu, he has got all his powers, the divine powers, I mean. So it is there. Then after Ram avatar came the Krishna avatar, and the Hindus consider that Krishna avatar is the latest avatar, and just before Krishna avatar there is Ram avatar. Therefore, this Krishna avatar is the perfect avatar, where the supreme personality of the Godhead is all there imbibed in this avatar. So Krishna has got 100% qualities of the God, whereas Ram, even though precedes Krishna, Ram is also a perfect avatar. He is always considered as a kind of a Purushottam, Purush, that is the supreme man. But then he has got certain weaknesses, certain flaws, because he is not 100% avatar. But Krishna, in Krishna avatar, it is generally believed that by many scholars, I do not know how far this is true or false, that Krishna avatar is a perfect avatar, where Krishna remembers himself quite well, that he is taking the form of a human being. He is the Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Vishnu's own plays and his own actions, now Krishna knew well. Therefore, in Mahabharata, Krishna recited the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the mouth of Lord Vishnu himself. This is generally believed by the Hindus. Many millions of Hindus believe it. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be one of the most sacred holy scriptures of uh, Vedic literature. Similarly, Ramayana simply tells the story of Ram, and Ram is a perfect man. He is a perfect human being, a perfect incarnation. When compared to that incarnation of Lord Krishna, he is a little, inferior to Lord Krishna. This is what the Krishna disciples would like to say. For example, there is International Society for Krishna Consciousness there, and all these people, they focus their attention only on Krishna, because according to their view, Krishna is the most perfect avatar. This is the latest avatar, and according to this story, this theory, one avatar is still yet to come, and that is called Kalki avatar. Kalki avatar is a kind of an avatar where all these evildoers and all the sinners will be punished, and that will be, it is somewhat equivalent to the doomsday which we find in the Bible. Therefore, this Ram, even though he is a perfect human being, there are certain weaknesses in Ram. Ram often forgets himself as an incarnation, so he behaves as a man. As a man, we have got all our flaws, isn't it? And we are subjected to anger, we are subjected to envy, and we are subjected to all the senses. So we are controlled by our senses. We cannot control our senses. Instead, our senses control us, and that is how we human beings commit our sins. And there are so many inadequacies. So sometimes Ram forgets himself that he is the avatar of Vishnu. Therefore, he behaves in a human way. So to err is human. There is a proverb in English: to err is human. Therefore, as human beings, we all commit mistakes, and all these mistakes Ram commits in his life. But uh, in spite of all these mistakes, Ram is still considered as a superhuman, as a perfect human being, because of his good qualities of his head and heart. Therefore, he is very, skilled in uh, shooting arrows, skill in warfare. So he is a prince, a perfect prince. And there are so many versions of Ramayana. I think many of you have seen Ramayana, so I need not tell all these things. What I would like to tell you is that Ramayana deals with the story of Ram, and the Ram is considered as a perfect human being, as a perfect prince, and he is considered to be one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu. This is very important. And then there are certain weaknesses, twists and turns in the life of Ram. So, for example, he was considered to be a very good prince and a noble prince, and then as being the eldest son of King Dasharatha, then he was supposed to take the throne after the death of his father. But his father was kind enough, to give the throne to Ram on the following day because he was becoming old. Therefore, he decided the day, and then it was declared, and everyone in that kingdom, that is Ayodhya, they were very happy. They were celebrating because from tomorrow, our beloved Lord Ram will become the king of Ayodhya, and Ram will become a very able ruler because he has got all the good qualities, isn't it? But then suddenly, by the twist of the turn, there are some wives. The second wife of Dasharatha. Dasharatha has got some four wives. So his wife Kaikeyi, her name is Kaikeyi, and then she was instigated by her maid servant, by her lady attendant. Her name is, I think, Manthara. Yes, she was an old lady, and she asked Kaikeyi that, why are you celebrating the coronation of Rama? Your own son is there, and his son is called Bharat. So you have got a son Bharat, and Bharat, instead of becoming the king, now the king is going to appoint Rama as the king, and your son is not going to become the king. And then why are you happy? That is how she tried to induce Kaikeyi to think otherwise. Kaikeyi said, "Oh, no, by virtue of this law, that was a patriarchal society. Therefore, it is the law, natural law, that the eldest son will become the king after his father. Therefore, there is no harm when Ram becomes the king. And Ram is a good man, therefore his brother is there. There are some brothers of Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatrughan, all four brothers are there. And Bharat is the son of Kaikeyi. Then that Mathura lady instigated Kaikeyi to ask, that old king Dasharat two boons. And these boons, Kaikeyi already forgotten it. There was a time when this king Dasharat, he was wounded badly, and then Kaikeyi attended her husband, and she was giving all the precaution, all the hospitality, and she was taking utmost care for her husband. Her husband was the king Dasharatha. By the time they were very young during those days, therefore, Kaikeyi took great pains. Then uh, Dasharat was recovered, and the Dasharat was very happy. Therefore, Dasharat promised to his wife Kaikeyi that he would give whatever she asked, two things. Then Kaikeyi said, "Of course, now at the moment I don't have anything to ask. So when the time comes, then I will ask you. But you must, as you had already promised me, when I ask those two boons from you, then you have to give me." Then Dasharat promised, "Okay, yes, I will give it." And that is how the matter settled. Then after a long time, when Rama was going to be coronated, then Manthara remembered those that incident. Then she asked Kaikeyi that now that is the proper time, you must go and ask your husband King Dasharatha that your two boons. One boon is that Ram should go on exile for 14 years. That is very long period. For 14 years he must go on exile. And then another boon is that instead of Ram, now your son Bharata should become the king. These two boons. And as the king had already promised, he is now bound to give those two desires, two wishes. Now you make these two wishes. First wish is that Ram should go to the forest. He must be in exile for 14 months, 14 years. Then the next boon is that the next wish, her son Bharat should be the king. Then, but on the following day, the coronation of Ram would be there. So all the people, all the country and the palace, they were celebrating it with merrymaking, much fanfare, and the lights were lighted, and it was a great celebration. But then just in that night, Kaikeyi went and asked her husband these two wishes. Then her husband was in dilemma. The old king Dasharatha, he had never expected such a wish, such a desire from his queen, and that it just everything she was simply trying to put a spoke on the wheel. Then everything became somewhat distorted. So it is in English, in dramatic thought, we may call it a twist. It is kind of an anachronism, isn't it? Sudden realization of the truth, then reversal of the fate, and then Dasara realized it. Then Ram heard the promise, and then Ram, sacrificed his right to become the king for the love of his father. So even though his father would not permit him to go in exile, then Ram volunteered himself. Yes, in order to keep the promise of my father, now I will go in exile. There is no problem for me. I will not become the king. So I will try to, fulfill the promise made by my father to my mother. Therefore, I have to fulfill it because they were all Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas, they are the ruling class. Therefore, they consider their word very seriously. Once they commit something, then they have to keep that promise. Therefore, that type of tradition was there, and that period in history is known as Saityajuk. Saityajuk means the age of truth, and now we are living in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is something, it is very contaminated, polluted, and it is the corrupted age. But Saityajuk, there was not so much corruption. Therefore, people were good, and the people were always trying to keep their words. Therefore, as Dasharat had already given his word to the queen, and as the queen was demanding something quite abnormal, something strange desire, boons, and he was in dilemma because there was something vicious, something very, evil in that desire, in that wish of Kaikeyi. But then Ram solved it, and he offered himself to be in exile, and he sacrificed the throne for the sake of his father. Then he agreed. Then on the day on which he was supposed to be the king, then he was leaving Ayodhya for the forest, that is in exile. So, and then accordingly Bharat was put in the throne, and now Bharat was a good natured man, and then even though by circumstances brought him to the throne of Ayodhya, then he could not forget Ram. So in the name of his Ram, his brother, the name of his father, he was governing the country, the Bharat. And it is generally believed that the name Bharat, India is called Bharat, Bharat Barsha. It is because the king Bharat ruled India in the absence of Ram. So for 14 years, in the absence of Ram, in the period when Ram went into exile, Bharat was ruling the kingdom of Ayodhya. So this is the story of Ramayana. So Ramayana begins from this exile, and during the exile period, Ram, as I had already told you, Ram was subjected to certain human attributes, and sometimes, he forgot, and sometimes he was taken into jealousy. So he behaved. There are certain, flaws in the character of Ram, and he behaved as if he was an ordinary human being, and he could not all the time remember himself to be the avatar of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, he went to the forest, and there in the forest, he came across, say, certain yeah, monsters, and then his disciples. So Ramayana is full of the glorification of Lord Ram. And Ram went to this forest in exile along with his wife Sita. Sita is also devoted wife of Lord Ram, and Ram was accompanied by his brother Lakshman. Lakshman is his younger brother. Of course, his step brother Lakshman's mother is another queen. So Lakshman was born by another queen, Ram was born by another queen, Bharat was born by another queen. There are three queens. Therefore, but the brothers, they love each other well. So Lakshman accompanied Ram in the jungle, in the forest. So in the jungle, they were, you know, building a hut, a shelter, and they were living there. Then, one day the monsters, a kind of a terrible woman, a monster woman called Supernakha, she came there and she wanted Ram. Then she tried to attack Sita. Sita was the beautiful wife of Ram. Therefore, Supernakha, they could, take different forms. And then Ram wounded her. Then she was very angry. Actually, Ram did not want to kill her, but he simply asked his brother Lakshman, to drive her away. And then somehow, Lakshman wounded her, and she was very angry. Then she went to her brother Ravana. Ravana was the king of Lanka. Lanka is now Sri Lanka. And this Lanka was a very, wealthy kingdom, richest kingdom, and it was ruled by a king called Ravana. Ravana, of course, was a Brahman. Now he became a Rakshas, that is a monster, and he was ruling. He was a very, very powerful king. And then, when Shurpanakha told the story, uh, of her encounter with Ram and the Lakshman. Then Ravan was very angry, and Ravan wanted to teach the lessons to these brothers. Therefore, he went out, and there he found Sita, and then he wanted her. Therefore, he took the form of a beggar, and he was asking for these alms, and he was coming to the hut. And by that time, in order to distract the attention of Ram and the Lakshman, Ravana used a ploy that all these monsters, they have got the great power to transform themselves. This is a kind of a transformation. So they can take the form of a beast, they can take the form of any creature, any living creature. So Ravan, asked one of his great uncles. His name is Marichi, who was an expert in all these transformations. There's a kind of a metamorphosis if you to see like it. So he was transforming into a beautiful golden deer. Deer, deer, deer. Deer is a kind of animal, a beautiful animal. Uh, and the golden deer, a deer made of gold. So that was just loitering around the hut of this Ram, where Sita was looking after. And the Sita saw that deer, beautiful deer. Then Sita wanted it. Therefore, Sita asked her husband Ram, to get it for her. And Ram went to catch that deer, golden deer. But then, after going there, then Ram found that it was a kind of an say, ploy used by Ravana to distract her. And then actually Ram wanted to kill the deer. Then the deer took the form of Ram, and in the voice of Ram, the deer shouted for help. And then Sita asked Lakshman, her brother-in-law, just to go and see whether Ram was in trouble or not. And Lakshman in the beginning, he was a bit reluctant because he knew these people, these monsters, they can pretend anything. So it may not be his real brother Ram who is in trouble. Anyway, according to Sita's insistence, then he went there to catch. Therefore, by the time when Ravan came into the hut as a kind of a beggar, then there was nobody. So Ravan took the form of a sage, a very old beggar, and he was asking alms from Sita. And
And
before the
then
departure of Lakshman, Lakshman put a rekha, a line, he wrote a line, and he asked Sita not to go beyond that line. Because if she crossed that line, because she was alone in the jungle, therefore
she
she
was alone in the jungle,
was not
therefore
supposed
she
to
was
cross
not
that line.
supposed to cross that
But
line. But
Sita crossed it.
Sita
That's how
crossed it.
Ravan caught her,
That's
and
how
then Ravan
Ravan
took
caught
her
her
away in
and took
his
her away
country Lanka.
in his country
Then
Lanka.
Ram and Lakshman knew it. Then they were helpless, and they were trying to find Sita, and then it took a long time. There's a long history, and then ultimately they went to this Lanka. They found there, and they collected a huge army, and these armies are the battalions of monkeys, battalions of deer. So In the jungle they do not find any human beings, therefore monkeys were there. So monkey kingdom was there, then monkey king Sugriva, Bali, all sort of other things. I will not tell all this story in detail. Then Ram fought the war and Sita. It is just like Homer's Odyssey, where Helen of Troy was taken by the Trojan prince, this Troy Prince Paris, and then the Greeks invaded Troy, and then ultimately, Troy was burned down and the Helen was rescued. Similarly, the whole city of Lanka, it
Yeah.
was burned
Hmm?
down by the
Ano sa
monkey
ni
warrior,
Mochi?
great devotee of
Ay, dyan ni
Lord
Gomo
Rama
Chani.
Hanuman, and that's how
Tiyan.
Ravan was defeated, and ultimately
Sa
Sita
tao
was
mo,
brought
wala
back
kang
into
karan.
Lanka,
All this
and
ano ba?
then Ram and their Sita, they were warmly received by the people, and then somehow Ram was ruling it nicely, the country. And then one day, Ram heard the story, the rumors by those people. So some people in the they were telling that this lady, she had been there in Lanka for many, many years, for many months, and now Ram is taking back. So in
This
order
is
to prove the
gone.
chastity of Sita, Ram had thrown Sita into the fire, and the Sita was not wounded, she was not burned, and that proved her chastity. And that is how Sita was tested, her chastity. But then again, some people said that so in course of time, Sita, became pregnant, and she was about to give birth to some baby children. Then people started talking about that. These people may not be the actual son of Ram,
Ram
because
Saktu.
she had been already there in this Ravan's country
Nampak
for
ka
a
ni
long time.
Ramsey.
Then Sita wanted, Ram wanted Sita
Chris na
to
supak tidak ada buti saban.
send back again to the forest. And Sita was in trouble greatly, and she was crying. But then in the forest, she gave birth to two sons, Ram and no, no, what is the name of the two sons of Sita? That I forgot, Laba and the Kush. Anyway, one is Laba and the one is Kush, and they were living in the Valmiki's Rishi Valmiki's ashram. And then just by a stroke of luck, Valmiki, simply provided them with shelter, hospitality, and he taught everything. She took care
Laba
of
and Kus.
Sita and her sons, Lava and the Kusha. They were the twins, of course. And when they were, growing older, then Lava and the Kusha, they were taught this Ramayana by Valmiki. So Valmiki himself is a character in the Ramayana. So he is the author, and he himself, told this story of Rama to the sons of Ram, Lava and the Kusha, and that they were singing the glories of Rama. That is how then ultimately Ram and his sons were united. And again, something happened. Sita was again to undergo another test. Already she had been tested when she was coming back from Ayodhya. She was tested the fire test, and that is called Agni Pariksha. And then again another test was going to be conducted, because she had been in the ashram of this Valmiki for a long time. Then Sita could no longer bear all these ordeals, therefore she prayed to Mother Earth and the Jia, and the Mother Earth, gave open, and then a vast crack appeared, and then Sita was taken in into the. And these stories, equivalent stories, are found in the Greek mythology also. When Apollo tried to seduce Daphne, then the same thing happened. Daphne prayed to Apollo, and the Apollo, is a flower, is a symbol of poetry, and then after entering the Depono, definitely then a laurel uh, tree was growing up. So not Apollo, laurel. So Daphne's transformation into laurel. Then Apollo knew that that flower, laurel flower, was Daphne. Therefore, that flower became the favorite flower of Apollo. So laurel flower is still considered today as one of the symbols of poetry. Anyway, similarly, Sita also entered into the art, and then that is how Sita's story came to an end. Then, so after the death of Sita, then Ram did not have much to do. Therefore, he also went to the river Sarju. Sarju is a river. Still, there is Sarju River in Ayodhya. If
Ay, ikang di Ramayan wali di
if you
ko.
go to Ayodhya, then you will find a great river Sarju. It's a very big river, and that is one of the branches of river Ganges, and it falls on the Ganges River, Ganga River, and that Sarju River. He went down inside the river. So in a sense, he committed suicide. So he went down. That is how the story of Rama ends. So this Ramayana means the story of Rama. It was told by Valmiki and it was told to the sons of Sita. This is the story. This is the structure of Ramayana.
Ay, Rama, tsala
So
iba kang di.
in this great epic, what do we find is the the overwhelming presence of faith. In spite of our great strength, our great wisdom,
Nanti
we
Valmiki
cannot
mayuda.
control
As
our
from the
faith.
poem.
The best part of Ramayana is that Ram was supposed to be the king in the following day with a great celebration, fanfare, and all the people in the city Ajodhya, they were celebrating it. They were very happy, and they were simply, say singing, dancing, merrymaking, and it was a kind of an euphoric sort of celebration. And then
Hot bro.
suddenly,
Kaya kya?
by the twist of the fate, then Ram, who should be the king, instead of becoming the king, he went to the jungle, he went to the forest, just as the primitive man, just Adi Manav, it is known as the primitive man. Therefore, he was reduced to a beggar and he was hunting and he was trying to catch, perhaps the golden deer, he was trying to catch it just for the survival. So, during those days, hunting was the main occupation of many of the people because people did not know much about this agriculture. Of course, agriculture was there, so agriculture, hunting was there. So Ram, who was supposed to be the king, by the twist of the fate, turned to a vagabond and he went into exile. See the irony of man's destiny. Therefore, we cannot remain complacent. So in the hope that this is becoming something which is yet to come. He was very close to becoming the king, so close, but just a few minutes before becoming the king, then he suddenly fall. It was a great fall. So this is the twist of that, and the man should encounter. So
Wow.
Ram was a great
Ram
man.
ke
So
haathon mein.
Ram could maintain his balance during those moments, from crisis, from celebration to crisis. So it was climbing just like in the heaven. So he was in a euphoric mode, and he was as if in even then he was suddenly falling from grace. And that period, Ram remained composed, quite calm, quite controlled, and that shows his dignity.
Kaya kya?
So even in that great, misfortune, he could maintain his dignity, and that's very important. And his calmness, and then he gave his words. He promised his father that he would keep his word. So the love of his devotion to his father, so his devotion to his country, his devotion to his
Lain
father,
niya ba,
his
Lakshman ji?
devotion to duty, and his, say, composed and the balanced stature in grief, in sorrow, in pain, in pleasure. This is what we have to
59.
learn. So this is the qualities.
Total is
That's why we call
112.
this Ram a great Purushottam. And the Ram Rajya is a word,
Yeah,
it is a
what
cliche. It is often used by the present government. So Ram Rajya means symbolically a government where you listen to the people. Ram was an avatar of the god, and he knew that Sita, his wife, was a devotee. She was chaste, isn't it? And she was, of course, a great sati, and there was nothing wrong in the character of Sita. But in order to satisfy the people, because people were ignorant, people were not as wise or as conscious as Ram himself. Ram knew it. Therefore, Ram was a far above the average people. He was a cut above the average people, and he knew everything. He was a wise man. He knew everything. But in order to satisfy, in order to please the innocent public, so he simply, put Sita into several kinds of tests. And ultimately, in the final test, he was defeated. He was defeated in the sense that, Sita could no longer bear the ordeal of, insulting her again and again in public. And that Ram forgot it. Ram had forgotten it, and ultimately he also committed suicide in a sense. So, due to his mistreatment to his wife, if he knew that his wife was says there was no fault with his wife, then why should he be subjected to that kind of ordeal in order to satisfy the ignorant masses? So whatever you try, those people, ignorant masses, those gossip mongers, they will always remain gossip mongers. But Ram forgot all these things because of his devotion to the people. So that lesson you can learn. That is why he is known as Purushottam, the supreme. And then he committed, or when there is a famous Chanakya slok, there he says that, Ram knew, Ram was a wise man, he was a great prince. Then how could, he not differentiate the actual deer from the golden deer? There is no possibility that a deer made of gold could run here and there. It is not possible. A golden deer simply cannot exist. But why did Ram not know it? Therefore, Ram was going after it to catch it. But why should he go to catch it? Had Ram been there in that hut when Ravana came, then the tragedy of Sita might have not happened. Sita might have not been abducted by Ravan. But taking advantage of the absence of Ram, Ravan came and took her away. Had Ram been there in that hut, then there was no chance of Ravan getting Sita. Anyway, Ram went out to hunt for the golden deer, which is, just from the common sense, we all know that there can be no golden deer. But Ram, for a moment, he was simply at a loss and he could not differentiate the actual deer from the golden deer, isn't it? So this is what, so at the time of, once, say, for example, great suffering and the misfortune, for example, when something great tragedy is going to happen, then you may forget your judgment. There may be some error in your judgment. Vinas, this is in this slok, the Chanakya slok, they call it Vinas Kale Viparita Buddhi. Because when the time of this great tragedy comes, then our judgment becomes erratic. There is some flaw in the judgment. So Ram committed that great mistake in that very crucial moment where, she should be by the side of his wife. He simply left her. It was simply Sita wanted the deer, of course, but Ram knew that the deer was not the actual deer. It was not a natural deer, it was a golden deer, so there is no possibility of running after that deer. Actually, he killed it. Just after killing that deer, then he realized his own mistake. Therefore, that is how, fell upon Ram. So, that type of human conditions where we human beings, we live in a world where, uncertainty looms large. Today I am talking and tomorrow I don't know what will happen. So, just we do not know what will happen in the next moment. So we must always be judicious and our judgment will always be balanced and we must always maintain our composure. That is that seems to be the message given by Ramayana. So Ramayana has got so many, say, ramifications. So in my next class, we can have some more discussion on the ramifications of this Ramayana. So whenever I am free, I can keep in touch with Ernest and I will take care of other important portions. So first, I will take care of this paradise loss is important. So this Ramayana and Mahabharata we can discuss when we have time in the future. Just I have made my introduction to Ramayana. Of course, I will give one more lecture on these great Indian epics, certainly, and that can be done. But before doing that, let me first complete the important portions of Paradise Lost and some poems of Tagore. So first, let us begin with Paradise Lost. So tomorrow or day after tomorrow, tomorrow we have got a meeting. Therefore, tomorrow I may not be having the class. If at all I am going to have the class, then it will be at this time. But this time I am very tired. And therefore, let us see. I will keep in touch with Ernest. Ernest, do inform me. And if possible, tomorrow I can start Paradise Lost. Or let us find some other date. So day after tomorrow, we can also start a paradise laws. And I will give some lectures on paradise laws. And in the meantime, I ask all of you to buy a book, the book Paradise Laws. It is a very important book and it may take some time. Paradise Laws is a great epic because in Ramayana, I am not reading it, but in case of Paradise Laws, of course, I am not going to read it between the lines, but you have to read it. Ramayana, I don't ask you to read it. You can see the Ramayana series from the YouTube and there are so many narratives of Ramayana. So any narrative will do. And of course, if you are interested in Valmiki's Ramayana or Tulsidasa Ramayana, then those Ramayana we can have some discussion again on the specific topics. But for the time being, we may try to take up Paradise Lost. So from tomorrow onwards, I ask all of you to get the book Paradise Lost, and I will give some lectures. Let us discuss Paradise Lost. Okay.
Alay,